we can sit there and we'll go at it. She's a more creative person than I am.
Mhm.
So, like, I'll come to the table with these ideas, but she'll think of totally different ones because we're so different, and it's awesome.
That back and forth on you guys having different ideas on way to go, that's collaboration. And hey, everyone, welcome to another episode of the Fit to Grit cast, where we sit down with individuals and talk through all those visionary type ideas that come to us during our normal daily gym break. Today, I have a special guest, Chelsea. Chelsea, why don't we just start off by you telling everyone a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your story, what helped you come about to create Home Turf Fitness?
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. My story, I guess, goes back to really, I played volleyball probably at the age of 12 when I moved from California out to Virginia. And I really got into that quickly, and found something that I loved and had a passion for and just excelled at. So I played all year round. I played junior Olympic teams. And traveled across the country playing in huge tournaments and stuff. And of course, during all that through high school, I wanted to play in college if possible. And so I did everything I possibly could. But this was back in the I'll age myself here. This was back in the like mid early to mid 90s. And recruiting and all of that was totally different than it is now. It was like the dark ages compared to now and everything that they do. No social media, there was none of that stuff. So it was like putting your foot to the pavement, making the phone calls, going to places, getting your name out there, making VHS videotapes for recruiting and stuff like that. And I did go on several recruiting trips to schools that I was interested in, but I did end up getting a full ride scholarship to Eastern Kentucky University, Division I, and that's in Richmond, Kentucky. And I played there for 4 years, and learned a lot in that process, and then after I graduated from, college, I actually went and got I guess, a paid internship at, USA Volleyball at, the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So I worked for them for quite a while and then ended up leaving for whatever reason, I don't remember. It was a long time ago, and I worked for Mikasa Sports next, which they're actually the maker of the volleyballs that are the Olympic balls, like the sponsored ball. And they were out in California, and I'm originally from there, so I moved back. But I hadn't been there for so long. So when I moved back, it was just, it was totally different from the East Coast. So I had all my family out there and stuff, but it just didn't feel right. So I ended up moving back east, and had some other jobs in between, but ended up being the first assistant volleyball coach at the University of Rhode Island, and after doing sports marketing at Providence College as well. So, and that was actually my major was broadcasting, and then my minor was marketing. So I coached at the University of Rhode Island, and what to me that was more enlightening because I was under a head coach, and he actually knew my head coach very well. They had started some coaching accreditation with USA Volleyball together. So he knew her, and but I will say that working under him, he was a completely different coach than my coach was. So it was just enlightening to me to see another side of college Division I college coaching and how it actually could be in the sense of taking care of the athletes, the nutrition, mental health, like all of that kind of stuff. I learned a lot. I obviously did a lot of strength and conditioning through this process. I was not the strength and conditioning coach, but those coaches were kind of widespread throughout all the sports, and there's only so many of them. So, I would work with them. I'd run the programs. So basically, sports had been my life. Continued to be. And as I was getting older, I had always wanted to become a certified personal trainer. But again, I said, my major was broadcasting, communications, and marketing. I just never went that route. And so finally, at the age of 45, I decided to get certified, which by law, you are not required to be certified as a trainer. However, obviously, it goes a long way saying, that I'm continuing education. just everything involved in getting a certification. It just says a lot about the person, I think. So, and we wanted our company when Melissa, my business partner, and I started this company, we wanted to make sure that anybody and everybody we hired was certified within whatever they did.
Yeah.
And so it makes a big difference. So, she actually has the academic background, and she was an athletic trainer. So we put our minds together and, created the company. Now I'll tell you, the company started because her daughter, does cheer, and if anybody knows cheer, they are in the gym 6 days a week, hours upon hours. So those parents just sit there. I mean, some obviously probably leave, but so Melissa would go on her own and do her own workout out in the parking lot for herself. And she'd have all these moms come and be like, "Hey, can I join you? I'll get a workout in too." And so she had the idea like, "Hey, this is like actually a good idea." So that's kind of where our business kind of blossomed from that idea. However, we don't just focus on like cheer groups and sports and stuff like that. Like we have all the equipment. I got battle ropes, Bosu balls, wall balls, tons of dumbbells, and I take all of it to the client. So wherever they may be, we're in middle schools and schools in the county that we're in. I do teachers and staff, and the school pays for it for the teachers and staff. So they can get a workout in 2 days a week, after school, and we're in private homes, we're in communities with large groups up to, like, 13 people, and then we have one-on-ones, and I have a husband-wife couple, mother-daughter, but our niche is really group personal training and probably women 30 to 65. That's tends to be what we pull in, but we do have men, who are part of it because they realize these are strength workouts. These aren't like, just basic fitness dance classes and stuff like that. These are written programs from myself and Melissa and our other trainers, that we specialize for each group that we do. So, and that's kind of how it grew. I mean, we're super small. We have probably 2 employees, including myself and my business partner. And then we have some independent contractors, probably 6 people total, who do something for us in the fitness capacity. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how it all came together.
That's a long story. So you were also an athlete too, and it's funny because you probably haven't. I don't know how much you looked into me before you jumped on the cast, but we used to work with a lot of professional athletes, college athletes, all that, and there tends to be a very similar type personality type, not negative in any way, but there's the same kind of personality type that in the fitness industry as in the sports industry, because I think that, and that's kind of a plethora of why the Fit to Great cast became what it was because you yourself were trained at a younger age on how to reach long-term goals through those short-term activities instead of thinking about it the opposite and going, oh, just short-term gratification, right? And that plays very heavily into business, into building a solid business. A lot of companies really fail at understanding the long-term goals and how to reach those long-term goals versus, hey, just for instance, bring me 80 clients tomorrow, right? No matter how small you are, and taking that time and that patience. And so I think that what you're doing, even with the size that you're at, you've taken the time, which is pretty much stage one of what I say, the studio model, even though you're kind of outdoors, is have been validating your service and validating your offers and what you're going to do, and doing that in a much more sustainable way instead of let's just build and spend until we break, you know?
Well,
Uh,
and that's the thing that, like, I part of me feels guilty because I feel like, "Oh, maybe I'm not ambitious enough," but we're happy, like, we don't need to be huge. We really wanted to fill this need of those people who don't have time to go to the gym, don't like the gym, don't know what to do in a gym, so, like, we fill that need for those people, and can cater to all fitness levels and modifications for, aging and injuries and stuff like that, and that's what we find that people really like about what we do. They
Well, and that goes back, right? That goes back. You found your audience and you understand how to shift your offerings and your programs to that particular audience with how you do the strength training. Yeah, I mean, the psychographics are going to shift. Like I'm a dad of 3. If I was to take my son to a soccer game, for instance, and I'm like, man, I want to work out, you probably would be a good fit for me. So you were able to find the how as well, like being able to go in and say, hey, moms and dads are busy, like,
especially
you
if
know.
you have
I,
kids.
and I have 3, man. Like going to the studio for me right now. I would love your program out here because like I'm trying to fit in my own visionary time. Like
Yeah.
every day
And
is
I've had a group before where the kids were at soccer practice and the moms are just sitting there, and I've gone to the park at the soccer practice at night and worked with the parents out while they wait for the kids to practice. So, I mean, it's perfect because they can, two birds with one stone, so to speak. They can get
yeah.
their workout done without having to take the time to go to another place that they're already going to 10 places in a day or whatever, and they can get it all done in one spot, but still be there with their kids. So
Now, one thing I really want to bring up, because you brought something up interesting. You talked a lot about your business partner, and I know she's not on this call with you, but I think that it's, and I've never been a component of having a partner in the business myself, but having employees that act as partners is more so my kind of mythology. But that what I've seen from a lot of the greats is the complementary type positions that can be held by you versus her. You in general, but everyone who has, a partnership type mythology, because we can't do it all ourselves. So how is having a partner kind of played a role into the kinds of systems and basically the role that you play in the growth of the brand compared to what her role is in the growth of the brand?
well, I mean, we couldn't have matched up better, to be honest with you. I mean, we're very different personalities. She's very high energy, like, and good. She's just go, go, go all the time. And I'm not. I'm a lot more low key, and so that is total opposites. But in the business sense, bringing those together works really well. And we actually worked at a job together previously, and that's how we met.
Mhm.
So we already kind of knew we worked well together. But it's great because when we first sat down and we're developing this company and who's going to do what and what needs to be done, we just delegated knowing whose strength was what. And then there's been some changes over the years. We're going into our 6th year of business, and there's been some minor changes here and there, but we work really well together. And yeah, we don't agree on everything, but we're able to come together and like hash it out detail wise, break it down, and then we figure out a solution. And we've always figured it out. So, either I've gotten lucky having her as my business partner, but I couldn't ask for a better business partner. But she runs her groups, and she programs differently than I do. And sometimes I sub for her groups. And so they get a taste of how I program my workouts. So it's kind of nice because, not everybody's the same. And it's kind of nice to have those differences here and there, and to get different kinds of training from other people. So I mean, it's worked out really well at this point. So
Yeah, I think that you nailed something on a head that a lot of people could take away from this is don't hire yourself.
right,
Even if it's an
exactly.
employee or a partner, because funny enough, that back and forth on you guys having different ideas on way to go, that's collaboration, and that's strategy. I would say collaboration and in having the ability to have someone say no to you and or say maybe we should focus on this direction and you collaborate together is by far, I think, one of the biggest strengths that you guys have at your size, because a lot of companies don't have that, especially self-owned business owners or entrepreneurs, right? And
Yeah.
that tends to be a holdback for a lot of people.
Yeah,
Me, for instance, go
it's
ahead.
huge for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because we can sit there and we'll go at it. I mean, respectfully, but we'll go at it. And she's a more creative person than I am. So, like, I'll come to the table with these ideas, but she'll think of totally different ones because we're so different. And it's awesome because then now you have, like, twice as many ideas or she'll, have a good response like, "Well, instead of doing that, how about we tweak it and do it like this?" So then we compromise or whatever, and it always pans out. So I agree, it's a huge like, if she was like me, I don't know if we would still be in business, to be honest with you. So, and
Or
I
vice versa, right?
So
I'm not gonna say it's quite simple because it's not, but it really comes down to just someone and you brought up creative because, I've been in my industry enough, a long time. I've worked with plethora of businesses before I started to really focus in on the, athletic-driven community, that personality types play a huge role in, hiring, marketing, and, just the growth of everything. Everything is revolved around people, and, you usually have one person. Creatives are usually pretty good visionaries. They're pretty good at like saying, this is where we want to be in 10 years. This is our goal. And the people that are more, we'll say, checklist oriented, are a little bit more, yeah, operators. You're probably more of the operator. You're the kind of an integrator type. Like you probably like to sit down and make sure the system's right, make sure the trainers
my box is off.
check the boxes off, make sure the trainers are happy that they understand what they're communicating, while she's making sure that the alignment with the vision is continuing to grow strong with what you guys are doing. And so I think that you guys have found, the reason I bring that up, is because I think you guys have kind of a leg up compared to a lot of other people in at your stage, because it makes it very hard in certain valley of death periods within building a business where you're like, huh, like and I'll just be vulnerable and say, like, for me, for instance, I'm right now, I'm both the operator and the visionary. So you can only do one better. You probably work on the vision stuff and it could probably burn you out, where your partner probably, when she works on operations, she probably gets burnt out. And so it shows you that sometimes you just need to shift what your position is, and it's time for you to bring someone in that can take that stuff off your plate that may be burning out. Maybe that's why you're not happy in the growth of what you're trying to achieve with your passions, and still being able to bring those passions out. So I love what you guys are doing. What are kind of your plans? I know that you're still small. Do you guys have any like continued growth plans that you're continuing to try to do with the brand?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. When we started the company, it was more of a neither she or I are the money makers in the family. So we kind of started it just to fill that need, not so much to make money.
Mhm.
Obviously making money
Is important still. Yeah.
yeah. But, so we never set any, like, super long-term goals. However, we do it the fitness industry, it ebbs and flows, and with what we do, a lot of like, all of her groups, all of them are outside, and I'm in Virginia, and we've got, like, 4 inches of snow on the ground, and they're still running groups outside, and these clients don't care. A lot of all mine are inside, it's just the nature of the business. You can't pick and choose what comes to you, and you kinda take what you get. So, right now in the wintertime, business is a little slow, and she and I caught ourselves in recently, and we picked it back up in kind of a rut. Like, we were both happy with our schedules, for a while there. We couldn't really add any more, and the problem is to hire more personal trainers, you gotta have the clients to hire them, So you can hire a trainer, but then I don't have a client for you. So that it's like that's difficult too. So we kinda just were in a comfortable place, and we just stayed there for a while, but I don't know, something happened, I don't even know what it was, and, most of our business is word of mouth or
Mhm.
social media. We have tried the advertising route, we don't really have a budget for that, but we have put money into it, in certain places and just got nothing from it. Um, but the word of mouth and social media, we get more from. So we went through a stint where we did a lot of social media stuff, but oh my goodness, that's a full-time job in itself. So that kind of went by the wayside. So you were talking about burning out. So like we burned out of that. So we stopped doing it a lot. We burned out of our website and keeping up with it. So we just recently hired somebody to just take it over, revamp it, clean it up, update everything, and then they'll update like as we have things. So we're kind of picking back up. That's a new goal, the social media stuff, picking that back up, trying to get back out there and scheduling stuff on social media versus trying to just do it in the moment. And so that's working so far. So again, no serious long-term goals. If we grow and start bringing clients in, then we'll start hiring more personal trainers. We just hired a new one. So we have her on, but she doesn't have any clients yet. But she understood the situation coming into it. So it's a slow process. But that's it, like I said, if we grow, then we'll go with it. But we're not really pushing it at this point. But I know it's like if we could get our information out there, there's so many people who I know would love to do that, work out wherever they wanna work out, instead of going into a gym or something like that, so
You brought up something quite interesting, and I see this for brick and mortars as well, especially because the fitness industry has gotten to a point where and I don't know how many, if you ever looked at any like marketing companies where it was all about, like, hey, we need to bring more people in or we need to do that. But it tends to all run on, we'll teach you how to sell, and then you're just calling a million people and in your area and doing that stuff. And to me, that's the premise of the values of the fitness industry is community. And that's what we kind of need to keep
yes.
it, right? How do you evolve your digital marketing tactics when you're ready? Someone like yourself, I would probably come in and say, yeah, you don't need a fancy brand strategy. You don't need a fancy, like, you need to lead by example. You need to validate. And so I would probably come in and say, what you're doing right now is exactly where you need to be. I wouldn't come in and say, hey, you need PPC or Facebook In fact, I don't think Facebook advertisement and Instagram advertisement is needed in this industry. I think it's an e-com thing that somehow got brought over to the studio community and the fitness community. And I'm like, I get it, but I have to put 250 pieces of content out. I'm organic. I'm a marketing agency. Like, I have to. Like, that's my audience. But you're local. It's about community. It's about growth, slow, sustainable growth. And you're going through those pain points right now, right? Like, you should be going through those pain points. If I ever have a prospect come in and they're like, oh, I've never ran a Facebook ad in my life, or done any social media, or I don't even want to. This is for you. This is for you. I'd be like, well, to be honest, I don't. You don't need to be an expert at it, but you should have at least gone through the normal pain points of understanding how it works, leading by example, so that when you hire somebody, you understand what is needed. Like your web person that you hired, you know the basics at least enough now because you went through it. And that is needed. That's part of business growth, especially when you're bootstrapping and you're starting. Not everyone in this industry, and you can tell I'm passionate about this, needs to go out and get a $10 million investment from an investment company to grow a business. Like, in fact, those are the ones that usually fail because they come in and they have no idea what they're doing, and then they overspend on
Right.
crap. And so I think what you're doing is great. I think that, you're understanding your audience, understanding like, hey, we need to start small here, and you're going with the flow of normal business acumen and an operations acumen where it's like, now we need someone to help us with this. So how are we going to fill that role?
Yeah.
Even if it's small, how do we bring on a personal trainer? So I give you kudos for where you're at and what you're doing. So I think you're in a great spot. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And you're kind of in the normal valley of death for the stage that you're at, to be honest with you. I've been there. I know how it is for my business. So with that said, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit more about the company? Like, let's get into the company a little bit and what makes you different, what makes you special, um, for what you're trying to achieve, and what types of people would value
Mhm.
your services the most.
I think what we found is that the most of the people who come to us, probably one of the number one things is, they need accountability.
Mhm.
And people don't know how to program. Most people don't know how to program for themselves. So, a lot of these clients we have were probably clients who either didn't go to the gym, refused to go to the gym, don't wanna pay for the gym, or if they went to the gym at all, they did probably like a group fitness class, but they didn't actually go and really focus on like strength training and stuff like that. So that is what we do. That is our thing, is focusing on the strength training. Now, it's typically we have I'd say probably our average, like our median age is probably 40s, so in the 40 range. So we're dealing with a lot of women who are probably in perimenopause and menopause, and the way they need to work out is different, and they're not realizing those changes. So they're all like at a complete loss. So that's what we do. We come in, we strength train them. We also collaborate with a nutrition. My business partner is a nutrition coach also, but that's also like a full-time job in itself. So we collaborate with somebody who is a health and wellness coach. Um, so we have a lot of in the community. We can send our clients to her, but strength training is the biggest thing. So our programming has weights and dumbbells, and we talk to these clients so the women are not afraid to lift weights and push heavy. They're not gonna get big like men, a big myth that women are so scared about that. And we take everything to them. So it's not yoga, it's not body weight stuff. It can be, because that can be just as hard. But we try to make it interesting. If somebody comes to us and wants a one-on-one, we don't do your typical, like, when you go to a gym, you do assessments and, like, all of that stuff that you have to document. That is really not what we do. Like, we'll program specifically for that person and what their goals, and we'll tailor it to their goals. But unless they truly want all of that detailed stuff, that's not really what, our baseline. That's not really what we do. So, just trying to get people moving. A lot of people are just not moving enough these days. So that's our key thing. So just bringing the equipment to people, going where they feel comfortable, whether it's their house or, hey, I got 4 friends, we want to work out together. And if that's going to keep them accountable and bring a sense of community, then let's do it, because then you'll keep working out, and you'll benefit from it molecularly and potentially physically on the outside. So what we were going for, in doing this is the accountability and the sense of community it brings to people.
Yeah, and it definitely brings a sense of not just differentiation for what you guys are trying to do compared to the brick and mortar establishments, but you're putting yourself in a position where you're bringing that community together from more than just, these are all moms, these are all dads, right? And so it helps even them build relationships, which is a great vision, right?
Yeah, well, and we have everybody in a as an app that we use for communication, that you can't see people's, like, personal information, but, and that everybody who's in whatever group is in their group on that app, and we all communicate through that. Either give each other a hard time or put inspirational quotes or whatever you wanna say in there, and so that keeps it going between workouts. There's still communication there. It's not just on the day that they work out. And that's really big too. That helps a lot.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That definitely helps a lot. And that's the whole sense of community, right? Is the sense, and when you start living your brand like you guys are, you start building this community of like-minded people, and these people will then be your advocates to have more people come. And so back to at the beginning when we talked about marketing, it doesn't have to be, like I said, it doesn't have to be what works. You guys have seen what's worked.
Yeah.
How do you just amplify what works instead of going out there and trying all these different things? Is it possible eventually to bring on a different stream? Yes, but there's always best to have two. What happens if one breaks? Economy changes, blah blah blah.
Right.
You always have to kind of find two, but it's always good to start with one and not get that marketing fatigue. Which I think that you did one thing that a lot of people that we talk to never have a sense of, which is we tried it, it didn't work, so let's shift and find out what's working. When most kind of look at it and go, we tried it, and let's just keep going with it. Let's just keep going. Everyone else is doing it. Let's keep doing it. And I'm not saying that it may not work in the future for you, but you know, you just to be honest, like if you were gonna do you said you tried Google Ads, if you're gonna try Google Ads, like be honest, like that could become quite expensive. And you should have a good budget. And know that you're set. Like, hey, we know we're going to invest $2,000-3,000 a month towards, and you just need to. In Facebook ads, for instance, you're probably going to be like, oh, now we have to create a whole bunch of creative content. We have to think about the writing. We have to think about this, and it's like I always tell my pros, I'm like, you're not Nike. Like you don't have a $1 million budget to throw towards advertisements all the time.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, finding that community and finding those partnerships, like that's what it's all about. And I give you even more kudos that you're continuing to live by your guys' values and try to follow those values through the growth of what you guys are trying to achieve. And that's
You see, as you do it, you figure out what works and what doesn't work, and we're putting money into, like, putting an ad in some community for something, nothing came of it. We did, like, events, nothing came of it. We tried networking groups, nothing came of it, and we've done other things too, but where we're trying to get in is hard to get in, like communities, and you have HOAs, but then you have to know who to contact, and then it's like you're diving in way too deep, and then we're so tiny that now when we get into stuff like that, we start competing with those corporate fitness companies who come into these big communities, so we're looking more for the individual, like, groups and stuff like that help us out, and we do some local events, like ladies' night. They just had a New Year, New You thing. So those are perfect for us, fitness related, but those are very difficult to find. So, you just got to stay on the websites and the networking stuff to see if, what events pop up and stuff like that. So that's kind of what we do. Just keep searching.
Well, and I think that this is the great part about this is the kind of everyone looks at it and gets burnt out by it, but this is kind of the fun part about business is finding what really works and finding your niche, right? And I think that I'm not going to say I know the direction you go. You've been in your business longer than I am, but just hearing what you're saying, and I don't know if you've already tried it, but schools may be a good
Yeah.
opportunity for you. Probably
Yeah,
your
we've called every school in the county,
yeah.
and we've actually been in about 3 or 4 different schools over the course of a couple years, but they just don't always stick with it because I will tell you this, sometimes it's depending on when, like, if it's elementary school, those they don't get out till later, so by that time, those teachers are like, "I wanna go home." So when I've been in, this middle school near us, this is my 4th year there. So, like, that has stuck, and that group of ladies is like, I'll have anywhere from 5 to 12 people, on a given day. So, that has worked out great. Trying to figure out, like, why did that one work out, but the other ones didn't consistently work out? I don't know. Maybe it's the person. Were they committed enough to their fitness journey? That's
Yeah, and
very
you're always gonna have the psychological counterpart, and I
yeah.
think that a lot of people misplace, everyone's different no matter what, you're always gonna and that's, I think, why people tend to just focus on the demo so much because they don't understand the psychological side, because you can't, it's a lot harder, but, then you kinda just have to come up with a system, like, well, we know the middle school one worked compared to the elementary, compared to the high school, because of the times of days that when they're at school or when they have practice or when they have games. And so then you kind of look at it from that aspect of, oh, this is the one that's working. How do we then find other stick to the middle school route, cut out the elementary and the fluff of the high school and colleges are the elementary. And then you kind of just say, all right, let's see what furtherly works in this. And then you just take that 1% increment every time and try to improve it, right? That's the beauty of the long-term goals that we talked about at the beginning, right? Like looking at it from a long-term aspect and looking at it from much more of I want to grow sustainably versus unsustainable, versus,
Yeah.
I want to make $1 million tomorrow. Okay, well, if everyone made $1 million tomorrow, we all be having to thrive for $10 million.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's just, you know,
I know.
inflation would go through the roof if we all made $1 million, and then it would only be worth $1. So, have a better understanding of the concept of it is hard in business, and you just try to find your way to build passions off of what you do to, you know, have that grit and perseverance to kind of do it. And so,
Another the avenue that has worked for us is, actually going into businesses, like at a dental office.
mhm.
The ladies there, I would go work them out 2 days a week, and then we dropped down to 1. I'm not currently with them right now, but, they came back to me after a year hiatus, and I did it again, and so, like, even that is, like, something we could push, but, it's getting out there, and that to me would probably be a phone call or having a flyer or something and walking in and showing them, and usually people, I understand that you offer something like what we offer, you're like people get scared, like, "Oh, I don't know, I have a bad knee. I don't think I can do that," or whatever their reasoning is, and then they don't go to that next phase as we learn through all of our studying to be a personal trainer. Getting into that phase to commit is the hardest phase, and, we like to when we see that, we offer 1 free class so they can see what it's all about before they commit to it. Because I get it, you don't wanna spend all this money for a 6-week session, however many days you pick, and you have no idea what's gonna happen or what to expect or if you can even do it physically. So that's what we do offer that, but, getting into the workplace would be fantastic, but it's gotta be small workplaces because then you, again, are competing with corporate fitness.
And there you go. I think that just answered your kind of own your own situation there a little bit. Like, yeah, like if big corporate you're competing, that's not your audience anyway. Your audience would probably be the small business in the area, and probably hire more female type personnel, probably focusing on much more of an admin or someone who's in an operations spot like you instead of the individual, so that they can work on how do we keep retention with our team. Oh, our values are similar. So let's have these classes as part of our dentist office per se, our weekly or monthly routine, so that we give more ability for people to want to come work with us and stay with us, right? And so that could be like the avenue that you take with that. It just depends on if the values really match your values and what you're trying to do. But I love how you're looking and you're exploring these other types of options, and then kind of eventually seeing, hey, how does this pertain to the online space as well? How do we get this out there and find something that works from an online space? And right now, your app seems to be the best course of action, right? How do we take this app and build a community around it, and then leverage our trainers and our people to be our advocates for bringing in more people. And it really, I'm not going to say that's simple, but it really could be that simple, right?
It sounds so simple.
It sounds simple, but that's the point of strategy versus execution, right?
Yeah.
The problem is most people don't build that simple strategy and say, "Hey, let's focus on this." They just go out at the whim and they just say like, "Well, let's do all these things," and they don't have a plan, and then the execution's off, or they don't stick in it long enough. They don't
Yeah.
stick in it long enough to let it work because it does. No, even the things that do work are going to take time. you know.
Well, the funny thing is like when I was in college, I told you my minor was marketing. Like, I
Yeah,
think I probably used
that's
my
right. You
minor.
kinda do what I do. I kinda found a way into the field different than you have
Yeah.
in
But
the
the
same
problem
aspect.
is
Yeah.
what I was taught in the 90s is so like there was no email until my senior year in college. Like it did not exist. So that's where I'm at. So what I was taught had nothing to do with anything online, social media. It was all, putting your portfolio together and taking it to the person or making phone calls and it was all that kind of stuff. So now I'm like and I'm fine, like, I've learned the social media. Do I have a lot more to learn? Heck yeah, but, it's like a totally different way of advertising. I kinda like it better, however, you can't always pinpoint exactly, like, who you want to see it. There's some obviously, there's ways to tweak that, but, versus, walking into a building and talking to somebody.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people don't do that, and the problem right now that we have is that, it's finding who do I talk to? Who is the person that's going to help me, make this happen, in this business or in this community or whatever, and that's where we've hit roadblocks is like, who do you go talk to? Like, the community person or the I so that's been our biggest, issue is where to go to.
Yeah, and it's hard 'cause you kinda have to find but once you find one person, you can
Yeah.
probably find other ones. I've always tended to see that, back to where I'm at in my business, your market definitely tends to the best way to find your market is to see what are your problems with what you're doing, and so, you being much more of the operational mindset, it probably is going to be from someone in the, schools and or these small businesses that is in that operation admin type role that loves checklists, that loves,
Yeah.
like loves making sure we have employee retention and
Yeah.
working on the scheduling and all that stuff. Where your partner, if she does any of that stuff, it would probably be more of what I just said, like, oh, let's envision where we're going to be in 5 years, narrow it down to 1 year, and then come up with a plan to start trying to reach those people. And if it doesn't work, then we shift our market a little bit. And so sometimes too, you come up with the aspect of you try to market to one person and another type comes in, and then you're like, you have to learn, all right, well, this is really my market, that not this. Because
Yeah.
the biggest thing with online right now, that I'm seeing a shift at is because of AI and all the stuff coming out there. One, it's going to be very similar to what I just said about money. Like, oh, well, you want to do 100 pieces of content a month. Oh, well, now everyone's doing 100 pieces, so now you need 600 pieces, right? And so that's starting to come in fruition of what we're doing, but you also have the tendency to start thinking, okay, we have to be more authentic. Back to you saying that connection in the community side. How do we do that? Well, we have to stop talking at the person, but talking to them. So stop saying stuff like operations directors, how do we help you? It's more so what is the pain points that they're going through as an operations, which would probably be retention, how to keep their employees happy, how to keep them aligned, which would be, oh, well, let's start talking about how we can build better retention internally through us adding this program, which then leads you down the rabbit hole of, oh, well, now we know how much they're going to save on new hires because we're still following our vision of helping people, but we're also helping them save money at the same time. So, um, and that's something that I've even had a trouble with, being in the online community is how do you start to pertain the psychological pain points of these people? So a lot of that comes down to living those pains yourself and being authentic and vulnerable enough to talk about those pains to the world. But I'm ranting now. I'm in it. I've been in this is like my third podcast for the day, so I'm like all hyped up and I love connecting and I'm passionate about this stuff as you're aware. So why don't we cut the podcast towards the end now? Why don't you kind of just tell everyone like a little bit about where you are, how they can find you, and if they have any interest in learning more about what you guys are doing, how they can contact you.
Yeah, we're primarily we are in Prince William County in Northern Virginia, probably about 30 miles outside of DC. So we pretty much just do Prince William County just because we're so small. It's a big county. And between with the county, both my business partner and I, actually split it because she lives on one side and I live on the other. And then we do have Facebook, just Home Turf Fitness. And then we do have Instagram at Home Turf Fitness. And then we do have a website, which is hometurffitness.com, which is currently, as I mentioned, in the process of being updated. But it's still up, it's still live. So, and then if, anybody wants to email, it's contact@hometurffitness.com. Those are the ways you can get a hold of us through, you know, social media or email, like I said. A phone number you can also call or text the number is 571-265-7417. And that is our company phone number. So
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we put all those down in the description note so anyone can find it. Um, you'll probably have to reach out to me if you ever want to change your phone number because those things usually stay pretty static. But again, I really thank you for being on. You gave a lot of insightful information into not just what you do, but how you got to where you were, and hopefully it will give other people motivation to continue to try to spread their message and to grow around community. And so I appreciate you. I'm your
thanks.
host, Zach Coleman. This is another episode of the Fit to Grit cast, and we'll talk to you all later.